Right Honorable Speaker, we may not know what is contained therein, why these barracks are normally having blackout. The reasons could be budget related. So it would be important for our committee to interrogate such that it forms part of the basis of their report, Right Honorable Speaker.
Okay.
Yes.
Achut.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. As we talk about the police officer in a raincoat, we also have the police officer in an accident scene where people have died in an accident, they are bleeding, but the police officers don't have the personal protective equipment
True.
to even help themselves. Even the gloves, they are normally the first respondent in an accident scene before even the ambulance and medical intervention has come in. So it's very, very important that the issue of personal protective equipment is addressed. But secondly, even during their duties, we've seen cases of police officers knocked dead, injured in accidents by vehicles. And the question of medical care for the policeman and the policewoman who has been affected in that accident is not very, very clear. We have military hospitals, we have hospitals for the prisons, but for the police, there's still a very big gap. So I really want to ask that even as the committee looks at their welfare, let them also look at medical care as one of the areas for them to be assisted. Thank you.
Thank you. That should be looked at. Next, we've added a paper, order paper to get a report from LOP in a few minutes.
Statement by the leader of the opposition.
LOP.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in a minute I want to join you and colleagues to firstly appreciate that police officer called Abdallah Tusime. I've seen him on those roads, Bukoto, Ntinda, Chisasi, for about 4 years now. Very passionate about the work that he does. I remember about 2 years ago, I stopped just to say thank you to him. And he was shocked. He told me, "Hey, you man, you belong to the opposition. How is it that you're appreciating a police officer?" I told him I like to give credit where it's due. So he's a very passionate man, I'm sure, like several other police officers. So I want to salute him and his efforts. Honorable Speaker, without going into the merits of the matter that is in court of assault, I want to briefly condemn violence generally. Violence, whether it happens in homes between spouses, whether it be violence against an officer on duty, as is the case, as we saw the videos making rounds, it is wrong, it is improper. Whether it be violence also by an officer on duty against a civilian, whether they are arresting them, conducting an arrest, as we have seen sometimes, they do it brutally, in a very violent manner. Violence should be condemned because it is wrong. I'm glad we are speaking out now because it is an officer on duty. And like I'm saying, what happened is barbaric, it is unacceptable. We'll leave the courts to do their job. But likewise, we should also condemn whenever violence is meted out. Somebody is arresting a civilian, you already have them, but you continue to beat them as you put them on your truck. It is wrong. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, moving under Rule 53, I would like to present this very short report. And I want to begin by tabling a copy thereof about an oversight visit that I held together with some colleagues to ROKO Construction Company. Governments world over have increasingly invested in private companies to stimulate economic growth, foster innovation, and address strategic national interests. These investments can take various forms, including equity shares, loans, grants, and subsidies. While the government investments can provide crucial support to private enterprises, they also raise important questions about the role of the state in the economy, potential risks to public finances, and the effectiveness of such interventions. In recent years, governments have invested heavily in private companies across various sectors, from technology and healthcare to infrastructure and energy. These investments aim to promote entrepreneurship, create jobs, and drive economic development. However, they also involve significant risks, including the potential for inefficiency, corruption, and misallocation of resources. ROKO Construction Company Limited, established in 1969, is one of the players in Uganda's construction industry. It has played a role in the development of major infrastructure projects, including government buildings, roads, and other key facilities. Despite its long history, ROKO has faced financial difficulties in recent years, prompting the government of Uganda to intervene. In July of 2022, the government of Uganda gave a financial bailout to ROKO Construction Company Limited to rescue it from financial collapse. This intervention entailed the government acquiring shares in ROKO as part of an equity investment to keep the company afloat. Government said the decision to bail out ROKO was aimed at saving the jobs of thousands of employees and ensuring the continuation of critical government infrastructure projects that were under construction by this company. The proposal for the government to acquire 150,000 preference shares in ROKO Construction Limited was tabled here in Parliament on 7th July 2022, and it was accompanied with a letter of no objection from the Attorney General's chambers. This proposal was referred to the Committee on Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and the committee reported back to the House on 20th July 2022, recommending approval. In spite of concerns raised by a number of us here in the House, Parliament insisted on approving this motion to procure the shares. The entire transaction was to cost the government of Uganda 207.13 billion shillings, with additional share premium of 56.2 billion in financial year 2024-2025. The total thereof being 263.33 billion shillings. Honorable Speaker and colleagues, some of the key aspects of this bailout. One, government equity investment. The government invested this money, which is approximately 55 million US dollars, into ROKO Construction Company by buying a stake in the company. The majority shareholders include a couple of people, one called Man Francis Kola, 12,000 shares, Fried Helm, 1,500, another called Kurt Walter, 1,500. This move would ensure that the government becomes a shareholder in this company, giving it leverage in decision making. Two, there was the aspect of protection of jobs. ROKO says it employs 1,800 Ugandans, 1,800 Ugandans directly, and has indirect business relationships with thousands of others, including subcontractors, suppliers, and others. The government's bailout was intended to prevent massive layoffs and the potential for economic ripple effects. Three, completion of government projects. ROKO was involved and continues to be involved in several strategic government projects, including the completion of the Parliament Building, Cancer Institute in Mulago, Ministry of Finance Building, and several others. The government's stake was meant to ensure that these projects continue without delay, as the collapse of ROKO would lead to delayed completion of these projects. However, to date, some of the infrastructure projects that were fronted as a reason for the approval of this investment have not been completed. A case in point is the parliamentary chambers, IGG House, among others. Honorable Speaker and colleagues, as you know, Parliament spends billions on an annual basis to rent for office space for members and staff at Kingdom, Kampala, Queen's Chambers. Would not be spending this money if our parliamentary chambers were completed. The other aspect was financial restructuring. The bailout also involved a financial restructuring plan to help ROKO manage its debt. ROKO had accumulated a significant liability with commercial banks, contractors and suppliers, which had led to liquidity challenges. Let me briefly, as I begin to wrap up, talk about the oversight visit that we held to the office. In fulfillment of Section 6A and E of the Administration of Parliament Amendment Act of 2006. I led a delegation of some members of the Shadow Cabinet to visit this company's head office, but we were denied access. Aware that ROKO Construction had received a bailout from Government of Uganda, the objective of the oversight visit was to ascertain whether the rationale for the bailout was achieved, and as well to establish if the governance and management challenges of ROKO were being addressed. However, it should be noted that this oversight visit did not come to fruition, as I have mentioned, because ROKO head office located in Kawempe, Tula, and that was meant to be on Monday, 14th October when we went there, who were denied entry to the premises to have an engagement with the management team, thus impeding this oversight engagement. In a letter, the managing director, Mark Kohler, said that the board had rejected the planned engagement with members of parliament and the company's management. Our areas of concern, Right Honorable Speaker and colleagues: government construction projects have continued to stall despite this bailout, and this raises a lot of questions. I've talked about the parliamentary chambers, whose target of completion was July 2021, but that's not happened yet. The current shareholding is unclear, and government needs to clarify this, Right Honorable Speaker. It is not known as to whether amendments were made to include Government of Uganda investment and how much Government of Uganda owns in equity, what type of shares, and so on. Government ought to provide an explanation to this effect. 3. Government ought to appraise Parliament on the latest financial standing of this company, given that government approached Parliament with a bailout request. I think it's prudent, Right Honorable Speaker and members, that the House deserves to be given accountability of this bailout money. Government cannot just come to Parliament when it requires money, and when we are asking questions, government is missing. It's important that this taxpayers' money is accounted for. So we ask, did the financial status of the company improve? What is the status of loan repayments and payment of suppliers? What is the status of ongoing projects by the company, especially the government projects? Staff of the company have regularly reached out to legislators, Right Honorable Speaker, complaining about not receiving salaries for close to 4 months. Is government aware of these concerns by employees? And is government keeping an eye on this company in which it injected taxpayers' money? Are we not bothered by these concerns of Ugandans? In conclusion, Right Honorable Speaker and members, while the government of Uganda financial intervention towards ROKO Construction Company Limited was aimed at preserving jobs, continuing important infrastructure projects, and maintaining stability in the construction sector, the glaring concerns about project delays, financial transparency, and governance reforms need to be urgently addressed. For purposes of transparency, the Attorney General should be required to lay before the House the share agreement with ROKO. Parliament has a right to know. As people's representatives, we call for continued vigilance to ensure public funds are used efficaciously and that the interests of Ugandan workers and taxpayers are protected. Honorable Speaker and colleagues, I beg to submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.